I was supposed to sign my life away today. $900,000 in child support, the house, and my entire retirement. All of it. Going to a woman who spent 15 years lying straight to my face. My wife, Lenora, was already smiling, just waiting for me to accept defeat. But as I reached for the pen, I didn't sign. Instead, I handed the judge a brown envelope, an envelope that would prove that not one of our 3 children was actually mine. The air in that courtroom, it hung heavy. It felt like the atmosphere right before a summer storm breaks over the Central Valley. That sterile, recycled office scent, stale floor wax and desperate sweat, it seemed to cling to everything. I stared down at the mahogany table, tracing a deep scratch in the grain with my thumb, just battling to keep my breathing rhythmic and steady. To my left, I could feel Lenora. She radiated this palpable energy. She wasn't merely sitting there. She was vibrating with a quiet, smug triumph. For 8 long months, she had worn that same victorious expression, that sharp, polished smirk that suggested she'd already spent the money I hadn't even earned yet. Honestly, she looked radiant, in a way that felt like a personal insult. She was draped in a soft cream blazer that likely cost more than my first car. Beside her sat the shark, Desmond Pratt. This man charged $400 an hour to dismantle lives with a practiced smile. He held his hand out palm upward, his fingers wiggling in a silent hurry-up gesture toward the final divorce decree. He wanted my signature, and then he wanted his lunch break. That document represented my death warrant. It reduced 15 years of my existence to 20 pages of legal font. If I put pen to paper, she walked away with the house in the suburbs, both SUVs, the rainy day savings, and the kids. All of it. I ran the math in my head for the 1,000th time. Over $900,000. Nearly $1 million over the next 2 decades. The script called for me to be the good guy. To take the hit, walk out those double doors with a single suitcase and crushing debt, and just fade away. That was the expectation since the day she served me at work. Evidence? Judge Rowan Castellane leaned forward. I could hear the leather of his chair creaking under the movement. His massive, gray eyebrows rose like 2 caterpillars fighting on his forehead. Mr. Chandler, you've had months for discovery. This hearing is for final signatures only. We are at the finish line here. I understand, Your Honor, I replied. My voice sounded far more stable than I actually felt. I could feel the sweat beginning to prickle at the base of my neck. But this evidence, it only reached me 72 hours ago. I believe the court needs to see it before anything becomes official. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Lenora's smirk flicker. It was like a subtle glitch in a video game. That mask, the one she used to convince the world I was the villain and she was the saint. It finally showed a hairline fracture. This is ridiculous, Pratt interjected. His voice was smooth and irritating, like expensive silk. Your Honor, my client has been more than patient. We've negotiated in good faith. Mr. Chandler agreed to these terms. He can't simply, I can if the terms were based on fraud. I cut him off. The word fraud didn't just hang in the air. It detonated. Pratt's jaw tightened. Lenora's face underwent a terrifying transformation. Confidence dissolved into confusion, which was immediately followed by a pale, sickly shade of terror. She gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white, her manicured nails digging into the wood. What are you talking about? She hissed. Her voice was cracking under the strain. What fraud, Crawford? I gave her no satisfaction, not even a glance. I reached into the inner pocket of my cheap blazer, the one Hector insisted I wear to look relatable, and I pulled out a manila envelope. It was just a standard brown 10-cent office supply item. Yet in that moment, it felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I stood up and walked toward the bench. Every single footstep on that linoleum floor echoed like a gunshot. Behind me, I heard a soft, "What the hell?" from Hector Molina, my court-appointed lawyer. Poor guy had been pleading with me to settle and move on for months. He was convinced I was fighting a losing battle. I hadn't told him. I hadn't told anyone. When you discover your entire reality is a staged play, you don't call a press conference. You wait for the lights to be brightest and the audience to be seated. Your Honor, I said, handing the envelope to the bailiff, this contains DNA test results for all 3 children. Marcus, age 12, Jolene, age 9, and Wyatt, age 6. Judge Castellane accepted the envelope with the kind of caution you'd reserve for a live grenade. DNA tests, Mr. Chandler. Why are we introducing genetic sequencing at the 11th hour? To establish paternity, Your Honor. The silence returned. It was heavier and more suffocating than before. I could actually hear the hitch in Lenora's breath, a tiny, jagged gasp catching in her throat. Paternity? Her voice was a ghost of itself now, barely a whisper. What? What are you doing? I'm establishing, I said, finally turning to look her dead in the eye, that I am not the biological father of any of the 3 children you're asking me to pay nearly $1 million for. The judge extracted the papers. He read the first page, then the second. By the third, his jaw set so tight I thought his teeth might actually crack. He looked up, and the neutral professional mask of the court was gone. In its place was a look of cold, controlled disgust. Directed straight at my wife. He only needed 3 words to end the world she'd built. Is this true? I stared at the text from Marcus until the screen timed out and went black, leaving me staring at my own ghost-like reflection in the glass. Honestly, I just sat there. I'll be there in an hour. We need to talk, I finally typed. My thumb hovered over the send button like it was a detonator. And I knew that once I hit send, there was no going back to the comfortable, hollowed-out lie we'd lived in for 15 years. The drive back to the house? It felt like navigating through a fever dream. I passed the 7-Eleven where I used to buy Marcus Slurpees after soccer practice, and the park where Jolene first learned to swing. But they looked like set pieces from a movie I'd seen a long time ago. Every familiar turn, every cracked sidewalk I'd walked 1,000 times, it all felt alien, distant. My mind was just a chaotic loop of impossible questions. Like, how do you look a 12-year-old boy in the eye and tell him his entire identity is a fabrication? How do you explain to a 9-year-old girl that her father isn't the man who tucked her in last night, but some executive named Raymond, who she's never even met? I didn't have any polished answers. No script. I just had the heavy, jagged truth sitting right there in my passenger seat. When I pulled up to the curb, I saw Lenora's SUV in the driveway. It was parked crooked, as if she'd pulled in while blinded by tears. I took a deep breath. The air in the cabin smelled like old upholstery and the stale coffee I'd been living on for 3 days. I stepped out, my boots crunching on the gravel, and walked toward the front door, a door I hadn't unlocked in 8 months. Marcus opened it before I could even reach for the handle. He'd hit a growth spurt since the separation. He was standing tall and lanky, already eclipsing his mother's height. I looked at his dark hair and the specific bridge of his nose features I'd once proudly claimed as the Chandler genes. But now, all I saw was Victor Embry, the personal trainer I'd unknowingly subsidized for years. It was like looking at a stranger wearing my son's skin. "Dad," he said, and the relief in his voice, it nearly leveled me. "Mom's been locked in her room for an hour, just crying. She won't tell us anything. Jolene is freaking out. What happened at court? Let's go inside, buddy," I said, putting a hand on his shoulder. It felt solid, real, and heartbreakingly familiar. I need to talk to all 3 of you together. The living room was exactly as I'd left it. The same beige couch with the coffee stain from 3 Christmases ago. The same family portraits lining the mantel. Those photos were supposed to be our history, right? The beach trip in 2016. The birthdays, the messy toddler grins. Now, they just looked like evidence of a crime scene. Jolene was curled up on the end of the sofa, clutching a throw pillow like a shield. Meanwhile, 6-year-old Wyatt sat on the rug, his Lego sets completely forgotten. "Dad!" Wyatt scrambled up and threw himself at my legs. He nearly knocked me off balance. "Are you coming home for real? Mom said you weren't coming back." I knelt down and pulled him into a hug, burying my face in his hair. He smelled like grass and laundry detergent. I looked at his small, determined chin and those bright eyes, the exact replica of my brother Dennis. The betrayal felt like a fresh physical blow to the stomach, a sickening twist of the gut. I loved this little boy with every fiber of my being, and yet, he was the walking, breathing proof of my brother's ultimate deception. "We need to have a family meeting," I said. My voice was thick. "Can you guys sit on the couch with me?" They lined up like they always did for serious talks. Marcus on the far left, Jolene in the middle, and Wyatt climbing onto my lap. It was a scene we had played out 100 times before. Usually, it was about grades, or chores, or summer camp. I looked at their innocent, expectant faces, and honestly, I felt like an executioner. "Is this about the divorce?" Jolene whispered. Her eyes were already swimming with tears. "Are you and Mom? Is it over?" "Yes, honey. The divorce is still happening," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "But something else came up in court today. Something really big, that changes how we understand our family." "What is it?" Marcus asked. He was trying to play the man of the house. His jaw was set, but I could see the slight tremor in his hands. He knew the sky was falling. He just didn't know which part was going to hit him first. "Do you guys know what DNA is?" I asked. It was a clumsy start, but it was the only way I knew how to bridge the gap. "It's like the code for our bodies," Marcus answered. His brow was furrowed. "We just did a unit on it in science. It's how you know who you're related to." "That's right," I said. I took a shaky breath. The silence in the room suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. I had a DNA test done, and I found out something that surprised me. It showed that, biologically, I'm not your father, any of you. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just the silence of a quiet room. It was the silence of a world stopping on its axis. Wyatt looked up at me, his head tilted in confusion. "I don't get it. You're our dad." "I am your dad, Wyatt. I raised you. I love you more than anything," I said, holding him a little tighter. "But your mom had relationships with other men a long time ago. They are the ones who gave you your DNA." Jolene let out a ragged, strangled sob. "That doesn't make sense. You're the one who's always been here. You're our dad." "And I still am," I insisted. My own voice was breaking now. Being a father isn't just about a drop of blood or a lab report. It's about being there every single day. I've been there for every fever, every heartbreak, and every game. That doesn't go away just because a paper says so. Marcus was staring at the wall. His face was pale, unreadable. I could practically hear his brain replaying the last 12 years, reevaluating every single memory. "So, Mom cheated on you?" he finally said. His voice was flat, terrifyingly mature, multiple times, with different guys, and she just let you think we were yours. "Yes," I said. "It was the hardest yes of my life." He stood up abruptly. His chair screeched against the hardwood floor. He walked to the window and stood with his back to us, his shoulders hunched and trembling. "Marcus, talk to me." I called out softly, but he didn't move. He was a 12-year-old boy, trying to process the fact that his mother had turned his entire life into one long lie. Jolene and Wyatt had both crawled into my lap now. Their tears were soaking into my shirt. I held them close. The weight of them was both a comfort and a burden. I looked toward the stairs as the sound of a door creaking open echoed through the house. Lenora appeared at the top of the landing. She looked like a ghost of the woman I'd seen in the courtroom. Her hair was a mess. Her mascara was smeared across her cheeks like war paint, and her eyes were red and hollow. The perfect mom facade had been completely stripped away, leaving behind a woman who looked absolutely terrified. "Crawford," she rasped. Her voice was barely audible. "What are you doing? What are you telling them?" "The truth, Lenora," I said, standing up slowly while keeping the kids close. "The truth you didn't have the courage to tell for 15 years? They're children!" she screamed. She stumbled down the first few steps. "They don't need to know this. You're going to destroy them just to get back at me." "No," Marcus shouted, turning from the window. His face was a mask of cold fury that looked exactly like mine had an hour ago. You destroyed us. You lied to him, and you lied to us. Was it true? Is what he said true? Lenora stopped on the stairs. Her mouth was opening and closing like a landed fish. It's complicated, Marcus. People make mistakes. I loved your father, and did you cheat on him? Yes or no, Mom? Marcus's voice cracked, but the steel was there. Lenora's shoulders slumped. She seemed to physically shrink before our eyes. Yes, she whispered. The word finally fell out of her like a confession. With how many people? Marcus demanded. How many? 3, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. But I never wanted to hurt you. I was scared of losing everything. You let him work double shifts, Marcus yelled. His voice was rising to a crescendo. He missed his own dad's funeral to be at my championship game. He gave up everything for a family that wasn't even his. How could you do that to him? Marcus, that's enough, I said, stepping toward him. No, it's not. She's a liar. I reached my son and pulled him into my arms. He fought it for a second. His body was stiff with rage, and then he just collapsed against my chest. He was sobbing into my shoulder. I stood there in the center of the living room, holding all 3 of my non-biological children, while their mother watched from the stairs, a stranger in her own home. I don't care about the DNA, Marcus muffled into my jacket. You're my dad. You've always been my dad. I always will be, I whispered back. In that moment, the blood didn't matter. The betrayal, the lawsuits, the $1 million child support, it all faded into the background. We stood there, a broken family clutching each other in a circle, choosing each other over the biology that had failed us. Lenora stood alone on the stairs, crying silently, finally realizing that in her desperate attempt to keep the family through lies, she was the only one who had truly lost it. The echoes of Lenora's sobs felt hollow in a house that had once been filled with a future we both believed in. Now, honestly, it was just a building full of furniture I'd paid for, and memories that had turned into straight poison. The divorce was finalized 60 days later. The ink was drying on a stack of papers that looked absolutely nothing like the execution warrant Lenora and her shark lawyer had originally drafted. There was no grand payout, no $900,000 annual tribute. And I didn't get the house, which was a blessing, to be fair. I didn't want those walls watching me anymore, constantly reminding me of the 15 years I'd spent building a life on a sinkhole of deception. We split the retirement accounts down the middle, fair and legal, and the child support? That was struck down to 0. The real shocker, the thing that had the lawyers whispering in the halls of the courthouse, was the custody arrangement. See, I fought for shared custody. Every high-priced suit in the county told me I was a glutton for punishment. Crawford, they aren't your kids, they'd say, leaning over expensive mahogany desks while checking their watches. You have no legal tether, no biological anchor. You can walk away right now and never look back. But I looked at those kids, and all I saw were the victims of a war they didn't enlist in. They didn't ask to be the byproduct of a personal trainer's ego or a marketing executive's boredom. They didn't ask for a mother who treated the truth like a mere suggestion. They just wanted to be loved by the man who had always been there. So, I stayed. Every other weekend, alternating holidays, and 2 weeks of absolute chaos every summer. I kept the same schedule I would have had if our DNA matched perfectly, because they are mine, in every way that actually counts. Lenora didn't exactly get off scotangent-free, either. California doesn't take kindly to paternity fraud when it's laid out that clearly. She was slapped with a misdemeanor charge. In the legal world, it's a light touch, but in the real world, it was a social death sentence. She took a plea deal, 6 months of probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory counseling. Then, the local grapevine caught wind of the why behind our divorce, and the fallout was nuclear. She lost her job at the firm hard-to-sell trust-based marketing when you're a walking fraud case, and her entire social circle evaporated overnight. Those suburban moms she used to brunch with didn't want her condition to be contagious. I'd be lying if I said a small, petty part of me didn't feel a surge of satisfaction watching her carefully curated world crumble. But mostly, I just felt a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. I was done with the anger. I was done with the mess. I moved into a modest two-bedroom apartment across town. It's a far cry from the four-bedroom house with the manicured lawn, but it smells like fresh paint and new beginnings, instead of stale secrets. The first night the kids stayed over, the air was thick, with the scent of pine cleaner and takeout pizza. Marcus and I spent 3 hours on the floor of the second bedroom, wrestling with the incomprehensible Swedish instructions for a set of bunk beds for the younger two. I was struggling with an Allen wrench, trying to force a bolt into a hole that didn't seem to exist, when Marcus cleared his throat. "Dad?" he said. His voice was cracking with that typical teenage awkwardness. "Yeah, buddy?" I didn't look up, focusing on the cold metal in my hand. I looked up Victor Embry, my biological father. I stopped mid-turn. The wrench felt like ice. I forced myself to take a slow breath, the silence in the room suddenly very heavy. "And?" I asked. "He's a personal trainer in San Diego," Marcus said, picking at a loose thread on his jeans. "Owns a gym. He's married, has 2 kids of his own." "His own kids," I repeated softly. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. "Does he know about you?" "I don't know. Maybe Mom told him back then. Maybe he just forgot she existed." Marcus looked at me, his eyes searching mine for permission. "Do you think I should call him?" I set the wrench down and sat back on my heels. "That's a choice only you can make, Marcus. He's your biology. You have every right to know where half of your map comes from. But he's also a man who's slept with a married woman and hasn't checked in once in 12 years. That's a complicated shadow to walk into." Marcus looked at the half-finished bunk bed. "Do you think he'd even want me?" It broke my heart to hear the doubt in his voice. I grabbed his shoulder, squeezing tight. "Listen to me. Some men are fathers because of a choice, and some men are just a biological coincidence. I can't tell you which one Victor is, but I can tell you that I'm not going anywhere. If you call him and it's great, I'm in your corner. If you call him and he's a jerk, I'm still your dad, no matter what." 2 years have slipped by since that gavel hit the wood. I'm 49 now, still moving crates at the distribution center, though I'm running the floor now. My apartment feels like a home. The kids are. Well, they're okay. Not movie script perfect, but real. Marcus is 14, a whirlwind of hormones and high school drama. He never called Victor. He told me he wasn't ready. And I told him there's no expiration date on the truth. Jolene is 11. She's starting middle school and navigating the world with a bit more caution than she used to. She took the divorce the hardest, honestly, convinced for a long time that she was the reason the real family fell apart. It took a year of therapy and a lot of late-night ice cream runs to convince her that she wasn't the problem the adults were. Wyatt is 8, still running to me with scraped knees, still calling me dad without a second thought. As for my brother Dennis, he's a ghost. He moved to Portland a month after the truth came out, unable to look me in the eye. I haven't spoken to him since. Some betrayals are just so deep they drown out the blood connection entirely. Lenora got remarried last spring to some guy she met in her court-ordered group, a guy with his own baggage. I hope she's happy, mostly because a happy Lenora is a quiet Lenora, and I only care about the kids having a peaceful life. Last month, on Father's Day, Marcus handed me a card. It wasn't one of those glossy, store-bought things with a generic poem. It was a piece of construction paper, folded over, with a drawing of the 4 of us as stick figures. Inside, he wrote something I'll carry to my grave. "Thank you for choosing us when you didn't have to. Thank you for staying when you had every reason to run. You're not my father by blood, but you're my dad by everything that actually matters." I sat on the edge of my bed and cried for 20 minutes. They weren't the jagged, angry tears of the courtroom. They were the kind of tears that come when you realize the fire was worth the warmth. Lenora tried to strip me of my dignity and my money, but she couldn't take the only thing that actually mattered, the love of those 3 kids. If you're reading this and you've just found out your life is a lie, I want you to hear me. The truth is a wrecking ball, but you can use the rubble to build something stronger. DNA is just a blueprint. Presence is the actual building. Being a father is an act of will, not an act of biology. You will survive the betrayal. Whatever this is, the worst day of your life is still just a day. The sun is going to come up tomorrow, and the day after that. And eventually, the pain fades enough that you can breathe again. I won that fight. Not just in the courthouse, although that helped. I won it in the years after. In the slow, painful work of rebuilding trust. In the quiet moments with kids who chose to love me back. That's the real victory. Not the money I didn't have to pay. Not the house I didn't lose. Not even the satisfaction of watching Lenora's scheme collapse. The real victory is Marcus's card on my refrigerator, Jolene's hug when she comes through the door, Wyatt's voice calling, "Dad," across the soccer field. I'm heading out now, it's my weekend, and I've got 3 kids waiting for me to take them to the movies. If you found some strength in this, hit that upvote or subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to be broken. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to survive betrayal, that it's possible to rebuild. And just remember, the worst day of your life is just 24 hours. It ends. You don't have to. Tomorrow is coming, and you get to choose who you'll be when it arrives. I'll see you in the next one.